Hello. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. Thank you for tuning in. We had a couple of glitches in the beginning, but we got it all settled. Welcome to the SheEO Series. My name is Kayla Brown. I am a Fall 24 initiate into the Zeta Mu chapter of Iota Phi Lambda Sorority Incorporated, and I am the host of the SheEO Series presented by the Quintessential Emeralds. Today, before we get started about today, the SheEO series, we just want to highlight different local entrepreneurs and kind of share about their specific career trajectories and share any insight that they might have to people who are potentially interested in becoming an entrepreneur, learn a little bit more about their specific industry. Yeah, that's what our podcast is all about. And today we have a very special guest with us, one of our own, Soror Dr. Joanne Frederick. She has 25 years of experience as a licensed professional counselor. Dr. Frederick is the founder and CEO of JFL and Associates Counseling Services, LLC. Her practice specializes in supporting individuals, couples, and families dealing with anxiety, depression, grief, and more. She is also the author of Copology, an anthology that explores coping strategies for life's challenges, including grief, trauma, and single parenting. Dr. Frederick holds a doctorate in rehabilitation counseling from George Washington University, a master's in counseling psychology from the University of Baltimore, and a bachelor's in psychology from the Morgan State University. She is a proud member of both Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and Iota Phi Lambda Sorority Incorporated. In addition to her private practice, Dr. Frederick serves as an associate professor at George Mason University and is the executive director of the nonprofit The Hope Center, stands for Holistic Opportunities Propelling Everyone, which provides counseling and mentorship in underserved communities. Join us as we delve into the inspiring journey of Dr. Joanne Frederick, a true SheEO making a difference in the world. Hello,
Thank
hello,
you.
hello.
Hello. Thank you, Soror. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I hope you are doing well this evening.
I am. I can't complain. I tell you, I cannot complain.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I see you are wearing a crown and a sash. Please tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So my crown and my sash. So I am currently Miss Prince George's County Corporate America 2025. And, I got to put a plug in for Iota Phi Lambda Sorority Incorporated, especially people who may not know about it. It is a professional businesswoman sorority. And
Mhm.
so, it kind of relates all, but also holding the crown, my platform is mental health awareness, and that is what we'll be talking about today, I'm sure. But recently, I also ran for Miss Corporate America Maryland, and I came in first runner up and most photogenic. And I'll tell you about the whole experience, if you all care to hear, because it really relates to branding, marketing, and sisterhood and all the stuff that Iota Phi Lambda Sorority Incorporated is about.
Definitely. And I think some of the, well, congratulations on first runner up, first and
Thank
foremost,
you.
and most
Thank you.
photogenic. Congratulations to you. I think some of the things that you mentioned about branding and marketing, those are some of the business things that maybe we don't consider. We think about, um, where is it going to be? Do I need a brick and mortar? Some of the finances, how many people do I need? But some of the softer niche things like branding and marketing are some essentials. So I'll definitely be sure to ask you about that a little bit later. But first
Mhm.
and foremost, I'd like to ask, was there a defining moment or experience that led you to start your own practice, or have you always been entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I think both. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. And before my household, my grandfathers, both of them were entrepreneurs in another country. And my parents took that, what they learned as kids, and came to the United States with that. They migrated probably in the 70s from
Mm-hmm.
Trinidad and Tobago. And so growing up, my parents had two businesses. One was in real estate and the other one was in the field of cosmetology. So watching them doing things like hiring people, getting rid of people,
Mm-hmm.
um, finding housing for people, collecting rent,
Yeah.
collecting, payment from customers, but also really customer service, like what it took to maintain, to start and maintain a business is a household that I grew up in. And as a matter of fact, I remember when I was graduating from high school, and I always say I barely graduated, I had straight C's. And my parents sat down with me. They said, look, you have two options. You're either going to go to college or you're going to work the family business. And I said, oh, I'm going to college. I don't want to stay here. Now, in retrospect, if I did, I'd probably be really rich and wealthy today. But I chose to go to college, but that was definitely the only two options. Mhm.
Forge your own path. Yes, nothing at all wrong with that.
Yeah,
That's such a unique perspective. I think a lot of people who explore entrepreneurship usually they don't have a core group, family or friends, be it that have explored entrepreneurship, and they're usually the first ones to do so. And that can make it more challenging because you're exploring the unknown. What do you think are some things that you learned from just witnessing your grandparents and their experience with entrepreneurship, your parents? What are some of the lessons that you've learned that you think have been useful as you have your own practice?
yeah. Well, one of the main thing is that people think that when you're an entrepreneur or you own a business, you're your own boss. But what I learned is that's not true. My boss are my customers, the people
Mm-hmm.
that I service. So we always have to work to please them. We have to work to sometimes negotiate with them, whatever the business is. And so in my field, my business is mental health. And so, what does that look like as a private practice owner? What does it look like as a professor? What does it look like as an author, as a speaker? But that was the biggest thing was your customers matter. How you treat them, how you listen to them, how you allow them to evaluate you,
Mm-hmm.
and you keep the things that work and you change the things that don't work for customers was
Definitely.
something that was really important.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's really insightful information. I think that that's kind of the buzz term. I want to be my own boss. I don't want to report to anyone, but it's important to ensure that your customers are engaged and that as like markets trend and different things become more popular, depending on whatever your industry is, that you shift and adapt so that you can continue to thrive in
Yeah.
the industry that we live in.
Definitely. And I'll add another thing too. The other thing too is that if you're going to be an entrepreneur or business owner, you can't do it by yourself. You
Not
need
at
help.
all.
You
Yeah.
need assistance. You need guidance. You need a mentor. And so that's another key thing.
So were your parents and your grandparents kind of the mentors for you, or because they had done cosmetology and you kind of are in a different realm completely? So how did you find mentors and individuals to help you to
Yeah.
start?
Yeah. So I think they were mentors indirectly, and I didn't know that. But the mentorship in terms of the field, so let me talk about private practice, starting one. I remember I was working for a company and we were servicing people living with HIV and AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
And being a rehabilitation counselor, my job was to help them shift their career after a diagnosis. And a young lady who I worked with, but she became my friend, and we became business partners. We used to go to lunch and we would be like, man, we could do this on our own. We should start a private practice. And then one day she was like, hey, look, I found a space. Whenever you're ready, let's do this. And I look at her as a mentor, even
Mm-hmm.
though we became business partners, because again, there's there are things that are similar in all businesses, what you need to do, but the industry also matters. So one of the things in my industry is having getting your license,
Mm-hmm.
being able to get liability insurance, and just the other skills it takes to manage the business. That is different than the actual skill of delivering the goods, the deliverables, the
Yeah.
service.
Um, I think that mentorship, especially, I know to my generation, I recently graduated from college, so that was something that was pushed on us. Find a mentor,
Yeah,
find someone who can speak on your behalf. They call that a sponsor. Find someone who can help you to navigate the industry. So, and even I've always been taught that it has to be someone probably at least 5 years ahead of you, but having a peer who is your mentor who can help you to navigate some challenges that you may be encountering at the same time, that's also a good piece of advice.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, I think even though we age wise we were similar, but I think mentally she was 5 years ahead of me because
Okay.
I'm sitting
Okay.
there like, you sure we could do this? She's like, yes, this is easy, and we did it. But then I also had other mentors throughout, my journey and in different careers too. So
Mhm.
even as a university professor, mentors in there to kind of help me, know what I'm doing, how to teach, and even how to um, coordinate my
Mhm.
practice along with teaching, like how that all works together, and even being an author. And
Yeah.
so, those were a lot of mentorships that allowed that to happen.
I think that that's something that is a misconception that you have to do it on your own, that it's your business and whatever you want it to do, it's yours. But leaning on people is important because people may have more knowledge, they may have access to more resources, they may, and even people from different industries, how you mentioned, they just have a different vantage point, they have a different perspective, they can share insight that you may have never considered.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that 100%. And so my message is anybody thinking of starting a business, get with somebody and get some thoughts and ideas. And don't be afraid to either. Another thing, one of my mentors, and it's probably, I saw this with my parents. They never waited, till they had business cards or they had a flyer or they had whatever. They just started their business
Okay.
and did all of that along while starting the businesses.
So even you mentioned that it's important to speak to your customers and to see what changes they'd like to see. How has your vision for your business changed over time as you've learned to work in a virtual setting, but just how the world is changing? How has your vision for your business changed?
It has, it has. So, at one point, counseling was known to be face to face, brick and mortar. But then at some point, we started talking about virtual counseling, and we didn't even call it virtual. I think we called it like online, something general. And that was actually before the pandemic, way before. So we started seeing ethical guidelines, and I started dipping and dabbing in it. And that would be on the phone, counseling someone, or if you remember, we had like not FaceTime, this
Skype.
oh God, this Skype. That's it,
Mm-hmm.
Skype. All of that. We started dipping and dabbing with. So when the pandemic came, it was an easy switch for me because I was already doing all of that. But then now HIPAA comes to play. We got to make sure that the platform is HIPAA compliant. And so the business shifted there. But for a long time, even during the pandemic, I was able to do both in person and online. But then eventually, being in person was like a waste of money because part of what I did as an entrepreneur was
Mm-hmm.
share space. So
Mm-hmm.
my office, I had several offices, and I would rent spaces to other mental health professionals. And so that's another business
Yeah.
within,
Yeah.
the business, right? Exactly. Generating income. And again, I just mentioned I grew up that way. The other business my parents had was an apartment building. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was all just come into play. And so I had to shift with that. But then another shift was after the pandemic, I'm thinking people are ready to come back face to face. And when we would have face to face appointments, there may be no shows because they had to stay at work, working from home.
Mm.
And so what I realized was that I may have been ready to see people face to face, but folks are not ready. And
Yeah.
so we still doing a lot virtually, but also another shift was being able to have groups
Mm-hmm.
online, group
Okay.
conversations.
Yeah.
Another shift that's going on right now because of the political climate we're living in and all the changes is being able to reach people in a variety of ways, such as a podcast like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, over the years, there's been a lot of shifting. And so, if you have to be flexible to be able to maintain a business through time, things that you think you may not have never would have done or you don't want to do for your business, you probably need to in order to stay alive and stay afloat.
Yeah, I think that flexibility is important, especially as, I mean, COVID was, nobody knew that was coming, but just being able to continue to meet the needs of your customers and staying alert and cognizant of what it is that they need and making those changes as they come.
Yes, definitely.
So, as a business owner, um, how do you set boundaries between work and your personal life, and how do you know, define those lines? How do you manage to do that?
Yeah, so that has also changed throughout the years. So, for example, I'll start with during the pandemic, right? I remember being in this crisis mode because the world was in a crisis. And what that meant was I'm working sun up to sundown to like
Mhm.
make a difference and try to help. But then I realized, and my family was like, hold on now, you working a little too hard. Like, I
Yeah.
remember my kids was like, Ma, you need to get a life. You need to get a hobby. And I'm like, this is, no, you need to find something. So I
Mhm.
remember sitting down and thinking like, okay, I need to practice what I preach. What is it that I used to like to do, I can do in the comfort of my home? And one of it was nails. So I
Okay.
remember because everything was ordering online,
Mhm.
ordering a lot of different color nail polish. And at the end of the day, I would do my own nails, design. And that is art, that is
Mhm.
self care, and it is therapeutic. And so that was then. But now, again, things shift. So
Mhm.
now, especially preparing for the competition that I was just
Mhm.
in,
Mhm.
my self care kicked up even more. Competition and also the world that we're living in. It turned into working out almost every day with a trainer, a boxing
Okay.
trainer, and I
Mhm.
did that today as well. It turned into more self care things like facials and baths and candles and reading and just all like getting ready mentally and physically for this competition. And it worked. And so now that the competition is over, the folks who helped me and gave me these ideas and coached me and counseled me are like, look,
Mhm.
the competition is over, but I need you to continue with your self care. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's right, that's right. And so, to answer your question,
Mhm.
that is what the boundaries and the balance look for me. So, in the first thing in the morning, I take care of me first. I'm an empty nester, so I can do that now. Before, it used to
Okay.
be kids first,
Yeah. Yeah.
but now I love it. I love it. And the me first is I open my eyes and I thank God for allowing me to be in my right mind, that I
Mhm.
know where I am and what's going on. Then I drink some water. Oh, it feels good. I leave the water right at the side of my bed. And then I'll take my vitamins or whatever I need to and then go to the gym. Oh, and by the way, many times when I'm doing all of this, I take off my cell phone.
Okay.
So there's no distractions. It's
Yeah.
about taking care of me first. I might read a little bit. And then when I take my shower and I'm ready to start the day, then I'll turn on the phone to start the day. Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Another thing I do during the day, I take off the phone
Mhm.
and I'll take it off for like an hour because we tend to think, oh, if I take off the phone, there's an emergency I'm gonna miss. But when I turn back on my phone, ain't no emergencies going on. Nothing is happening. And I needed that break. And so those are the boundaries, the phone technology, just kind of monitoring how much I take in. Even the news,
Yeah.
monitoring how much I take in.
I think that that's been big, especially you mentioned the political climate that our country is currently in, and just the challenges individuals, especially in PG County and the DMV area, people have been experiencing a lot of challenges to say the least. I think that it's important, as you mentioned, to prioritize yourself and doing things. Sounds like on a daily basis, you have this routine that you created to center yourself and prepare for the day ahead. For individuals who are still, their nest isn't empty necessarily, but maybe they're balancing a business or just a heavy workload at this time, or maybe they're also in school, they have children, people who have a lot going on. Um, how would you suggest that they find time to prioritize themselves, or what can they do with a small amount of time that can help to recenter themselves and um, engage in some type of self care?
Yeah, I would say that was also me because I was in school when my kids were babies. And so, what I would say to those individuals is that it's an ebb and flow, meaning that sometimes we're on it with self care and sometimes we're not. But we gotta pick one or two things. For example, one thing I talk about is the seven dimensions of self care and trying to take some of that daily or at least once every other day, and that relates to how you caring for your spirituality. Keep that
Hmm.
in mind. How you caring for your finances, your emotional well-being. Who are you talking to when
Yeah.
things happen? Who is that person that you can confide in? You need to do that because, to your point, what you were saying about like the political climate or how we're living, people are losing jobs, they're
Hmm.
losing health, they're losing strength, they're losing a lot, a hope. But we have to talk about the stuff that we're going through, that we fear, and all of that is part of self care. So even the parent that is taking care of kids and their businesses and doing all of this, or the person not even a parent, we still talk about what you're going through and what your fears are. As a mental health professional, I talk about anxiety and depression being the number one diagnosed condition. People think it's schizophrenia or bipolar or something. But the thing about anxiety and depression is everybody goes through it at some point. But how long we stay in it and how we get out is what
Mhm.
matters the most. And so my advice for these people is just take one thing, and some of that might even be monitoring the amount of sleep we get. Even if you have to take a nap during the day, we got to do that. Monitoring what we put in our bodies, right? So that is from alcohol to healthy foods. We got to pay attention to that as well. Matter of fact, April is also Alcohol Awareness Month, the month to remind ourselves to check in. How am I doing with my alcohol intake? Is
Mhm.
it too much? Are people complaining? Do I not remember things after I have a drink? And so, again, as you can see, I'm using this as an opportunity.
Yes, of course.
You see
Educate the people.
that,
Yes.
right? Yes. And so that would be my advice for anybody. But again, we all fall off. Sometimes we're at our best taking care of ourselves. And then
Mhm.
life happens or a schedule change. But
Yeah.
it's you can start over the next day, the next week.
I think that that's a good perspective to take every day as a new opportunity. I as a new professional myself, I find myself Monday through Friday. It's just Monday through Friday, and you get up, you go to work, you got to be up at this time. Oh, work is however the day is, and then you got to get home. I'm a worker outer at night, so I go to the gym after work, and then I get home, and now it's about 8 o'clock, and it's like, oh, I got to make lunch for the next day. Oh, I got to lay down because I got to get up. So I find myself in this cycle of get up, but what I do to um break up the monotony, I plan things with my friends. So maybe not this weekend, but next weekend this is happening and I'm looking forward to it. So just to help me to kind of break up the monotony of the work week, I think that that's something that people could do. Or if you have a lot of different responsibilities, like you said, take a nap. That's simple, easy. Um, you know, a 20-minute nap is quick and it'll do the job. So I think that
Yeah,
recognizing is probably the first thing you need to do about what
yeah,
you need and how
yeah.
you can incorporate what you need into your daily routine.
Yeah. And I like what you said about spending time, quality time with friends and family, because that's my thing too. One of my self care is I love to socialize. I like to talk, have a good time. And I notice that if I go a whole week just working, I don't feel good. That doesn't make
Yeah.
me feel good. So in the middle of the week, I do have to do something with friends and
Mhm.
family. And I've been able to accept that about
Yeah,
myself. Mhm.
that's good to know. Um,
Why, you gonna invite me out?
I'm
You
gonna
hang
come
with
where you at. That's what sound like you be going out in the middle of the week. I'll be waiting till the weekend. I'm doing it all wrong.
Right, so you trying to hang with me then, huh?
Yes, ma'am. We can
Okay,
we can sidebar
okay.
after this and figure out something out. How so regularly in your industry there's a lot of compassion fatigue and burnout. How do you yourself deal with managing that?
Yeah, so what I've learned to do is have a variety of things to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if because I've done this before, if I work with people Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.,
Mm-hmm.
that's where burnout can come for with me.
Mm-hmm.
But how I prevent that is I do other things too. So I do individual counseling, I do group counseling, but I also teach on the university level. I run a department and I also write a lot of articles and books and lecture like this,
Mm-hmm.
doing work in the community that has nothing to do with paid employment
Mm-hmm.
or entrepreneurship, but giving back in the community. So
Yeah.
all of that prevents burnout for me because I'm doing different things. And it's not like I'm doing these things every day because I also make sure that I'm off Every week there is a day that I'm off. And off
Okay.
means that I don't have nothing on my calendar. Because people tell me, oh, you're so busy, you do a lot. But what it is I'm organized. I have
Mhm.
a calendar and a things to do list every day
Mhm.
since I was about 13. And this is
Okay.
probably that entrepreneurial
Yeah.
thing,
The
how I
environment.
handle it.
Mhm.
And my calendar, everything is on one calendar and it's color coded.
Come
So
on, color
yellow,
code.
color coded. It's easier now with technology. So yellow, for example, on my calendar is the fun thing. Like when I'm having brunch with my Order 5 Lambda Sorors, or
Mhm.
I'm, hanging out with friends, family, it's yellow. So everything is color coded. So that is how I prevent burnout. But also, if I feel like I'm getting weary, and also I listen to my friends and family. So, like for example, my mom called me the other day, and she was like, "What you doing?" I'm like, "I'm in bed." She's like, "Oh, good. I was hoping you had a chance to stay in late because you just finished this competition, and then you went to
Mhm.
Connecticut." I also listen to my people.
Yeah.
I don't know everything. The therapist needs a therapist and the
Yeah.
therapist needs to listen to people. So why wouldn't anybody else listen to the folks that loves them?
Mhm.
That's how I prevent and monitor compassion fatigue and burnout. Let me talk about compassion fatigue, if you don't
Go
mind,
ahead.
a little
Yeah.
bit. And this is for the people who have never heard the word or don't know what it is. Compassion fatigue is usually people who work in the industry of serving others. And we get tired. We get tired of helping people. And that is normal. That is part of the profession. But
Mhm.
also, as an educator in the profession, we're always talking about what is your self care plan to prevent compassion fatigue. And when you see it, what do you do?
Mhm.
Hmm.
You kind of your village. That's what I like to call my friends, my family. Um I think that as women, we are more prone to turn to our village when something happens at work, when something happens in out in the world, or in our relationships, or in other friendships with people. We often turn to our circle for advice, for insight. Um, I found that when speaking with men and our peers, our partners, our relatives, it's not as easy for them to open up as it is for women. So how do you suggest, if you have any suggestions, since this is the Iota Phi Lambda sorority podcast, how can we as women help the men in our lives to be more open to sharing about some of the challenges that they're facing, or just, not be ashamed or afraid to turn to us for whatever it is that they need?
Yeah, so I'll talk about that. So, first of all, I recognize that. And one of the things that I've done is encourage men to talk.
Mhm.
So, in my book, Copology, I have a section that's called Men Need Self Care Too. And
Mhm.
it's about three things that men can do, and the women, we need to be able to support them. That's one. And then the other thing is, I'm working on a book, a textbook with some of my male colleagues, actually. And I'm writing a chapter on counseling black men
Mhm.
because, I'm the only female on this project and I counsel a lot of black men over my years. But it's a little different counseling men than women.
Mhm.
And so, to your question, how can we help? Well, first of all, as women, as the mothers, the daughters, the wives, the sisters,
Mhm.
the God sisters, our role, we got to respect and give them the time of the things that they like to do. Give it to them, allow it. So, for example, I might be stereotyping. Some men like to go to a sports bar. Some men like to stay at home and watch sports. Like, let them be. Let
Mhm.
them do that. Matter of fact, I got to give this credit to Dr. Jermaine Bago. In Copology, the book, he wrote a chapter on how to deal with black men. And one of the things he said is leave us alone. Let us be.
Just like that.
Let
Okay.
us drive. Let us walk down the street.
Mhm.
Let us just leave us alone. Of course, and that message is to the world at large, right?
Mhm.
Like, stop pulling us over just because we're black men. Stop. The other thing I would say is women, let's not be afraid of men,
Mhm.
black men. I find that women are afraid of them. what they might do, what they may say, even in my profession. And so we got to learn to accept them, allow them to be, but also listen to them and encourage them to talk. So we say, "How's your day?" Are we really listening
Mm-hmm.
without interrupting them or saying, "Yeah, that happened to me too"? Because we do that. Women do that, but also we
Mm-hmm.
do it to the men too. Another thing is we have to lead by example for the men to open up. So, women, if you've ever been in therapy, you have a therapist, tell your story to a man in your life, which is your son, your father, your spouse, your brother. Because when we tell our stories, we normalize and we say, "Hey, help is out there. I went to a therapist or I got help and this is what it did for me." Now we're telling our story and it makes it easier for them to accept help. I would also say we got to monitor and watch how we talk to men. We you know can be aggressive. We
Mm-hmm.
can be go-getters, as business owners. We got it going on. But when we talk to men, we need to be respectful. We need to be able to listen even if we don't agree. And of course this is the same thing with interacting with anyone, but we're talking specifically about men. How do
Mm-hmm.
we encourage them? How do we be partners with them? That's what I
Yeah.
would say.
Wow, that was so much. I was mentally taking some notes.
Mhm.
I think that a lot of what you shared is important, and in even coming from you because you work with Black men and counseling Black men, so a little bit. You have more experience with it, so sharing your insight about how we can help the men in our lives to just live more freely and to be more themselves and willing to express the challenges that they're coming on or experiencing. Um, yeah.
And can I also add? So yeah, work with black men, but also I have a father that's a black man.
Mm-hmm.
I have sons that are young black men. They're like 19 and 30. And
Mm-hmm.
so I get it. I pay attention, I listen, we talk. I also have a brother that's a black um immigrant male. So that's a whole nother diversity. And so I kind of learned like what it takes for us to kind of, work together with these different roles with black men in my life. Also, I've been married, I got black men in my lives now, so I kind of, pay attention.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm the best either or the greatest. I'm just giving tips from the mental health professional
We appreciate your insight.
standpoint.
Yes, you have a wealth of knowledge, so we're definitely excited to you know take some notes on what you shared. I want to thank you so much for your time. You have been someone shared that you had dropped so many gems. We are so happy that you were able to join us on the SheEO series and share a little bit of insight about your entrepreneurial journey, but also talk about your profession as in general. I know that you had mentioned with the Hope Center having some things that are upcoming. So if you could share any information about some things that are coming up in your world and how we can support and remain engaged.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So, the Hope Center of Carmody Hills is an organization within a Baptist church, Carmody Hills Baptist Church, that I co founded in about 2017. And since then, we've been putting on mental health conferences and we've been servicing the community almost for free, counseling and group counseling. And even on a Sunday morning, one Sunday out of the month, we try to do what we call moments of hope. We bring counseling concerns, issues into the church on a Sunday. Matter of fact, I coined that biblio-psychoeducation. And so with the Hope Center, one of the things that we do annually that's coming up is our mental health awareness conference. It is May 17th and it's all day. It's from 9 to 2. So this year's theme is moving for mental health. And so we're going to talk about moving in terms of your emotional growth, movement physically and movement financially and also spiritually. And so we have about four guest speakers. I'm one of them actually. That's going to be talking about on those different events. And so that's the Hope Center. But we also partnered with Carmody Hills Baptist Church, and we also partnered with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Alpha Alpha Sigma Omega chapter. this year. And so again, that's May 17th, and this is another opportunity to get a whole gamut of things. Last year, the Hope Center, when we put on our conference, we had a principal and two students talk about the impact that the pandemic had on them, and it was amazing. It
Mm-hmm.
taught some parent stuff because we heard from the students and we
Yeah.
heard from the principal. And so that's the work, the community service work that I do within the Hope Center in Carmody Hills.
Okay. You also shared that you have some things coming up as Miss Prince George's County. Would you care to share anything about some of the activities you have coming up in that regard as well?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. Let's see. So this was one. Let's see what's coming up. Okay, so I think the day after tomorrow, I'll be on a entrepreneurial late night show, and so we're recording, but that's gonna air probably in a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday I did a sister to sister podcast. But other things that's coming up, May the 3rd, I think that's the first Saturday in May, maybe May 1st. I'll be on WEAA and I'll be talking about May as Mental Health Awareness Month. So, what are some tips? What can we be doing? Um, oh, yeah, the other thing that's big that's coming up, I'll be talking at a girls' conference in Philadelphia at Temple University on April 26th. And the females, the grade 7 to 12th graders, it's about 300 of them. I'll be talking about the power of the crown, the invisible crown that we all wear, men and women. But when we think of crowns, we're thinking about females, in this case, women.
Mm-hmm.
How to increase their self esteem and their mental well being and their etiquette and their communication. So that's a big thing that's coming up April 26th at Temple University. And I got to give a shout out to Dr. Roxanne Green because I just saw her online for, putting that gig together for us.
Okay, good, good. It sounds like you got a lot of things upcoming. Um, we are so happy that you agreed to join us here on the SheEO series and give some insight to all of our listeners. I can't thank you enough. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much to everyone else for joining. Stay tuned to our Instagram and our other social media pages to see when the next series will take place. Have a good night, everyone.